Uh, I'm going to start with my land acknowledgement now that we are recording. I recognize that I am in the unsurrendered territory of the Ashnabeg Algonquin Nation, who have stewarded the land for millennia, honoring their presence, history, and ongoing connection, while also acknowledging all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples, recognizing their past and present contributions and the historical injustices of colonization.
Oh, thank you for that. And as I say, folks, you can feel welcome to put messages in the chat. I may not always see them as I want to be just really in the moment. I don't have any other screens open, just all of you and Rob in my conversation with Rob. So, you can always unmute and go, hey, Renee Sarojini. And I'll just put my name is Renee Saro. I'm just putting in the chat the phonetics in case you have to hail me. Kind of looks like that. Renee Sarojini, in case you need to call out to me. So, welcome. It's the second Sunday in December. If you follow that kind of thing, it is the second Sunday in Advent, which I believe is peace. And given all the turmoil and conflict in our worlds locally and in the globe, I feel very grateful to be here in conversation with Rob Mclennan, who does so much for so many through many, many ventures, but particularly focusing today on above ground press. And so the rollout I'm envisioning is I'm actually going to talk about the weather through a weather poem that's about climate change and weather from the chapbook I launched last night at the very good place of People's Co-op Bookstore with an amazing group of people. And then I'm going to turn over to Rob, who will read something very, is it going to be poetry? Is it going to be prose? Is it going to be hybrid? And the book of sentences, yeah, you're going to surprise us. And then you'll all clap uproariously in the sanctity of your own space, and we won't hear you because you'll be muted. But then we'll have this conversation, and I have a few questions, and I think eventually Rob will have a few questions for me, and then we'll definitely open it up where maybe you have questions for either of us, or you have things you want to share. And we obviously just ask that keep it respectful for everyone. And yeah, I think how does that sound? If there's any concerns, put them in the chat. I'm going to get ready now to read from my chat book. The little sticky on here is like it says author copy. Um, um, oh, someone has found something in Voices from Planet X, Song of Play. I found these words at the ends of four separate lines in Voices from Planet X. They appear
Mhm.
in lighter text than the rest of the poem. Huh. Wow. I did not know that. That's interesting. That's really cool. Maybe it's a secret embedded into the printing of it. Cool.
I
Okay.
only pretend to know what I'm doing when I'm making these things.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to go searching for that. Thank you for that. All right, here it is. And I'm really interested for folks if you want to put something in the chat about weather. That would be cool. We're across Canada. Here it is, the weather. Northeast winds stripped, bare branches, great limbs felled, fir to oak, linden to strange hybrids, contraband imports, whispered indentured migrants, reserve army of labor, sold to work the edges of perimeter. Winter portal damaged. Change a whip saw, once gaping wide, now minuscule. Then again, huge, blasted, ice pellets strewn, snowbanks 8 fathoms deep, lakes and rivers. Temperatures below, 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 then sudden change to above. Ice cracks, ferocious bellows, chunks gaping the roar of ice water, jade green, liquid pushing slabs below, toss, tumble, unseen. We shipped in, transported, rendered, contracted, we to work the change. Supply lines jammed, rumble shake, quiet, quiet, rumble shake, change, a portal now minuscule, then snap, gaping wide below, below, core splitting fissures above, the sky thinned, ozone wearing off, earth shrugging us off. Temperatures below, 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 then above, once gaping wide, now minuscule. Earth's push pulled, pulling against the ice, fast melting. And that is the opening poem from Voices from Planet X, new speculative verse I'm writing from my epic fantasy and verse series, published by Above Ground Press. Woo! Thank you, Rob. Over to you.
All right, so I'm going to read something from the Book of Sentences, which came out mid-October from University of Calgary Press. As long as child does not distract me too much. Yeah, I know. Okay. Autobiography. One. Intimation and the whole of the poem. Ringo Starr, his early morning meander, in a hard day's night, a scene originated as a young lad too hungover from the night prior to do much else. One knows the language and the frame of reference, love and terror, the body and our means, this long tidal reach across 45 navigation locks, the possibility of leaving everything intact is overwhelming. Two. Invasion's glance, rhetorical amid the constant shift, embanking floodplains, a triptych of valley, gateway, estuary, the Tower of Babel, and the full weight of cultural history. Some greyhounds can sink like a stone. What are you getting? Hey, come here. Three. Rarefied, capturing the shadow of a wordless art. Beatlemania, he walked the day's breath, the glint of light and the cut, Britain's shoreline of liquid history, this medial, muddy watercourse. Ringo Starr, with each dense step, strolled solo, monochrome and sepia, his perambulation along the River Thames towpath, the embankment in Kew, Surrey, the Neolithic page, Horizon, one of the very best in London. There. And two more people have entered the waiting room. Oh my.
Ooh, are you
I'm gonna
letting
let
them in?
I'm gonna let them in. Oh, pen
Lovely.
camp. Nice.
Oh, very lovely. Welcome, welcome, everyone. We're just getting started, and that was fabulous.
Thanks.
Um,
I always love that detail about that scene from that movie.
yeah.
That's why they had Ringo just wandering along the shore. It's because he was literally too hungover that morning to do anything else. So they're like, I don't know, just get him to walk around a bit. Yeah, don't really.
Yeah, something.
Yeah, there is
Hey,
something.
so you know what I was just thinking? It's been quite a while since I was able to trek down to Ottawa and actually hear you read. So that was very special, actually
Thanks.
hearing you read as opposed to, doing all the things that I'm going to start asking you questions about. But I think maybe I'll start there with this new book. How long did it take you to write this book?
That's a good question. I always put dates at the end. I
Hmm.
think it was about 2 years. January 2019 to November 2021.
Oh, I
And
love how precise you are. Okay.
yeah, and I always do that. I know it's mainly for my own notation, so I can sort of have a sense of where it all sits.
Yes.
Um, okay,
Hold up the cover again.
I'm literally doing an event right now. I love you very much, but stop like poking at me. Um,
Okay, hold up the book cover.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's the second in a trilogy in my mind of sort of shared structural considerations and content of sort of home and family and reading and the swirling of sort of all of the above and cultural things, where Book of Smaller was 105 single stanza prose poems, because Christine had gone back to work after the year-long maternity leave after this one. And so all my attention span boiled down. All I could conceive of full time with a 3.5-year-old and a 1-year-old was the single stanza prose poem. And so Book of Sentences is kind of in my mind, it's kind of the lyric is pulling apart again. I had worried for a number of years that I was leaning too hard on the line break and relying on it too heavily. So Book of Smaller was what can I do without that entirely? And yeah, Book of Sentences is kind of after getting back into that core, kind of exploding back out again. Seems an
Wow.
overly long answer, but there you go.
No, it's the kind
But
of answer everyone's here for.
and this was also during COVID, obviously with those dates. So,
Right.
home with the kids all the time. My dad dying of ALS, Christine stroke, like it was just a swirl of just chaos, right? Do you remember that?
Mm.
No.
No, of course you don't. What are you going through?
You
You,
still
you
Chaos
can
and
have those if you want.
trauma, right? Chaos and trauma.
mechanical pencils.
You can have them if you
They're
want.
mechanical.
Yeah, they're mechanical. You can tell it like I don't have quiet moments.
Hmm. And yet there you are, finding the moments to write that lovely poetry and do things for all kinds of people. So that's a good segue, I think, into some of my questions. And I'd like to start with, because we're kind of celebrating Above Ground Press.
Mm.
How many years has the press been active now, Above Ground?
2026 will be 33.
Wow. 33 years, this almost 33 years, this 2026 year.
Yeah.
Um, what's the story behind getting it set up? Catch us up on how did you form this press that has published three of my chapbooks and
Um,
many others?
in the very early 90s, obviously, because it was July 93 when I first made the first official above ground chapbook. I had been spending weeks and weeks in libraries at the University of Ottawa, and Carleton University puts the rare stuff in sort of a locked room. But Ottawa U seemed to put all their weird ephemeral stuff on the shelves. So you could see like issues of Blue Ointment and all these early 60s BP Nickel chapbooks and stuff on the shelf. And I just thought, like, this stuff's amazing. How come no one in Ottawa's doing this stuff? And it was a number of years before I realized that, like, I landed in Ottawa in 89 as a Carleton student. A lot of activity had happened here, but a lot of it had ended like 5 minutes before I got into the city. Like Colin Morton doing Ouroboros or various other people doing small publishing. So I just happened to hit a moment where there wasn't any. And I thought it was really cool and it doesn't look that hard, like Blue Ointment. Like in a way, it's not that hard, right? Like Blue Ointment, he's using found paper. So anthologies of like no two pages were the same color or paper stock or anything. And you could just do that. And so it felt like this permission to just do stuff. And I made something of mine. It was fun. Made a second thing of mine, thought it was fun. But then I started seeing people around me that, maybe they should have a chapbook and sort of understanding that they wouldn't necessarily do that for themselves. So it
Mm.
felt like a way to kind of get a press started well before I knew what I was doing. I was just making one thing at a time, like, hey, you want to do a chapbook? That'd be super fun. Yeah, okay, let's do that. And then I just made things. Whenever I had money, or even if I didn't, I'd figure out cheap or free printing wherever. I knew friends with offices, and they'd just sort of let me in the back room kind of thing and just make stuff. And it was
Just
really no more
make,
complicated than that, right?
wow, just make stuff. So in that beautiful answer are the seeds of something I want to set up for my next question. So let's face it, you are prodigiously productive. You're a dad of two. Yay.
Three.
Three, sorry, three, elder plus two. You have a
Yeah.
loving spouse. You're a creative person in your own right. And I'm guessing I'm not alone in wondering as I see all the things you do for others, and you've just referenced it in a very low key, kind of throwaway kind of way. Where do you get this sense of service, of building community? Because you do that. And to be honest, I don't always see that in the micro world of poetry, or literary worlds in general. I don't necessarily see people being as generous as they could be. And you excel at making things for others, guiding them, coaching them, publishing them, connecting them. Can you talk a bit about, well, where does that come from, that impetus?
I grew up in a farm, so the notion of you do things for each other is kind of built into this, just the pure like baseline survival of living out in that kind of space. Um, so I just saw that as an example of the people around me. Like my dad would snowplow 6 driveways every winter. One person owned a combine, and everyone would hire that one guy because combines at that point were like $1 million machine in the 80s. And the only way he could probably afford that is by everyone hiring him to come over and do theirs. Um, it My dad would help mending a fence by a neighbor. Someone would come over and help dad do a thing. It just seemed like a thing, just a normal way of just living, uh, just your daily life. You did the things for others that you could, and what you couldn't, hopefully you knew someone who could do that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Throughout the 90s, me as running a small press fair, doing reviews, doing the chapbooks and doing all of these things, running readings, I realized through the process how unusual that was,
Mm-hmm.
which did make me double down on it. That it felt like, oh, this is a role I can have. This is a way in which I can be helpful. Uh, and there are like service can mean different things. Like Gary Barwin is good at service. Um, for many years, George Eliot Clark was really good at service. He would always find and support like the emerging poet in various whether Halifax, Ottawa, Toronto, whatever. And so service can mean a lot of different things. And not everyone wants to do everything. Some people can do one or two things and hopefully do that and do it well. And and there are a lot of things that I can't do. Like I'm running Verse Fest right now, our poetry festival, but someone else is doing the grant applications and the financials. Because you might as well just be giving me a bag of mud. Like I don't understand the financial spreadsheets. And the way it's surviving is that someone else is taking on that role. They would die if it was me doing it. So that's pretty much it. I get excited to make stuff and it's fun to make stuff and knowing that it is a way in which I can sort of be helpful, I guess, right?
Yeah, well, I want to really celebrate you for that as someone who's a late bloomer, a person of color, out here on the West Coast, on these Coast Salish territories. I always looked at what you were doing with awe and from a distance. One of your former students or confreres, Anne Stone, told me
Mm,
about you when I was at the
mm.
writer's studio. And she said, if you ever get a chance to connect with Rob in Ottawa, you should. And I scribbled down your name and I went and looked you up on the internet. It was such a different world then. This was in
Yeah. We
2009.
she wasn't a former student. We're the same age. We toured together
Oh,
across
that's it.
spring '99. We did
Okay.
like 8 weeks together from
Yeah.
coast to coast. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I started seeing all the things you were doing. I think you had me come out to Ottawa for the factory reading series, yet another thing you helped do. And the late, great, oh, what a loss, Martha Reed was there. You introduced us, and she published a really, for me, a really seminal work in my long poem work. We'll talk about that later. But circling back to you, okay,
Hmm.
so thinking about your curatorial poetics, they are really diverse, Rob. They're wide ranging. You do the gamut from traditional to experimental. I teach my students at Douglas College to self-select poems from Doozy, among other sites, and it's fascinating in its range, scope, depth, and diversity. And it's like something you do on the side. Can you tell us about Doozy and all these curatorial things you do, the Substack, etc.?
Well, a doozy, I forget how exactly that came about. I think it was like Susanna Gardner who invented doozy as um I think a conversation hub and she was publishing books, she was publishing chapbooks. She would curate these big groups where she'd get a group of people together in various geographies, and we'd all self-produce a chapbook of our own, and we'd all trade with each other. And they were like doozy collectives. So if there were like 35 people in a doozy collective, we would all be making a chapbook that we would claim was co-published by Doozy, and we'd all mail these chapbooks to each other. So we'd all get like 34 chapbooks in the mail. Um, and I think I was the only Canadian until I curated mine. I brought in like four or five other Canadians, but the like everyone else was in either in the US or an American in Europe. And it felt like just a neat way to open up the conversation. But I noticed that she wasn't doing a ton with her blog, the Doozy blog. And I thought, well, how about I do this? Because I know I'm loud and I'm willing to tell people, and I can bring people to the blog for what you're doing. But then she doesn't really do that much stuff, which is fine. But I've just been doing a weekly Doozy poem for since 2013, I think. And I'm trying not to repeat an author, which then forces me to keep looking. It forces me to go outside of my own just yeah, comfort zone, I guess. So I'm not just going back to the same five people because like we've all seen journals or curatorial projects where it feels like the same five or ten people over and over and over and over. And after a while, it's like, for God's sakes, have you not read anyone else? And so the doozy stuff, it forces me to look further afield. And there are times that I will prod those people maybe for a chapbook manuscript or, I'd like to see more. Like, this is amazing. I'd like to see more from you maybe for Touch the Donkey or periodicities or something else. So it does, it forces me to really look. And I get a lot of recommendations, which is very cool.
Oh my
Um,
God, what a fascinating person you are. So
yeah.
you've just now dropped into that wonderfully
Mm.
self-motivating. I'm thinking again on the back end, all the time, energy that takes, but setting that aside, because you're just remarkable. You've now mentioned other things that you publish. So there's Above Ground, there's these
Yeah.
Tuesday poems on Doozy Blogspot, but there's also the Substack periodices, which I never quite know quite what it is. Here's a precise question, and then you take it where you would like.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you can tell us a little bit about each of the things, and then here's the question. What do you look for in the poetry you do publish or curate in these different venues? And does it differ per the different thing? I'm really interested in this question.
It does. And I think for the Tuesday poem, I'm more open structurally than maybe for any other thing I do. Uh Apart from Verse Fest, which I'm artistic director, and Verse Fest is a thing where I might be artistic director, but it's not my machine, and I need to be open to other people's considerations and maybe work that excites me less, but it's a person who's very good at a thing that someone else wants to hear. And so I'm caretaker of a community event by VerseFest. But for Doozy, yeah, I'm excited about different kinds of work. Above Ground is much more my foundation from which everything else kind of emerges. If I'm excited about it and I want to show it to other people, because I'm not beholden to anything, I like there is no funding for chapbook, so it's all just my own money or tomfoolery or trickery or however I can make things. If it excites me, then I'm willing to make it and give it out. I do lean into the experimental and avant-garde stuff a bit more uh for Above Ground than my own general reading. Um Touch the Donkey, I lean even more into the experimental and say similar to periodicities. Touch the Donkey is a quarterly poetry journal that I started right after Rose was born. So the first issue is 2014 because there was some unconscious part of me that thought, oh, I'm home now with the baby. I'm not able to go out in the same way. People are going to forget me. And so I started a quarterly poetry magazine, which is like lunacy. I solicited and produced a first issue and 1,000 copies before I told my wife, and Jessica Smith, American poet Jessica Smith, who was in the first issue. When I told her that, she was horrified, and Christine is like, "Whatever, just one more just bit of nonsense he's doing." Um, and I do a ton of interviews online for each issue of Donkey, uh, with the logic that it might prompt orders of the issues, which never happened. But for a lot of the authors, it's the only interviews with them online. And it's like, okay, tell me about these poems. How do they fit with what you're working on? How do they fit with your whole life? How do they fit with, you've been publishing for 4 years or 30 years or, 15 years, whatever. And no, you can't have that. She's just going through my shelf behind me.
She's using the time wisely, but continue. This is so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
fascinating, Rob.
So Donkey, yeah, and what's fun, I try not to have any two people in any in the same city in any issue, and it's roughly half American, half Canadian, with the occasional other. So even if I'm doing nothing else but introducing poets to each other, that to me has enormous value, right?
Okay,
And
I'm just going to get you to pause because
yeah, because
Micheline,
Michelin just asked a
yeah,
question.
which
I
I was going to ask, so you had to
I
answer it.
I keep track of them with I keep like files on my computer with all of this. And Donkey is usually about a year ahead curatorially. And often if I get like too many dudes submitting work, I will spread that work out over like a year or year and a half so I can fit, say, other people in. Because I still notice as an editor, publisher, whatever, that I can get work by men before the ink is dry on the page, and work by other people sometimes takes a lot of patience and a lot of asking and a lot of checking in and a lot of patience, but that work is often of it's far stronger. So I don't know if there's a patience thing that certain genders don't really have. Which is a, super overgeneralization. Periodicities. I had been doing two different online poetics journals. I did poetics.ca with Stephen Brockwell. Yeah, it's a robot. Just put
Oh,
yeah, it's cool.
it's cool.
It is cool. Um, I did poetics.ca from like 2001 to 2007 with Stephen Brockwell, where someone else was doing the uh design work, and putting it online. And then after that, I did 17 seconds after Brockwell, and just wasn't part of poetics.ca anymore. And even 17 seconds was a third party doing the design work. And after that kind of fell apart because the designer just got busy with life.
Yeah,
I had been wanting for a long time to do an online poetics journal that I had actual control over. And I wasn't having to kind of beg someone or phone someone like, hey, you've had that for 8 months. When is that issue coming out? Kind of thing. And periodicities, I know how to work the blogger format. I can post stuff tomorrow. I can post
gotcha.
stuff tonight for
Can
tomorrow
you
morning.
just can you just explain for folks? I have some friends joining. I want to give a
Okay.
shout out to my dear friend Laureen from
Mhm.
Surrey, who's just an amazing supporter of the arts. But could you just explain a bit how you define poetics?
I it's a good question. I guess conversation, its style, its shape, its format, it's how the work gets made and what goes into the work and what the work is built out of. Um, I think that's a good explanation.
Yeah, yeah.
So just all that conversation around poetry. And I had been doing like I do a number of things that people can submit poems to here and there. So periodicities is the one thing that you can't submit poems to. I don't take unsolicited poetry, but I still every few weeks I get always a mail sending me a submission or asking if he could submit work. And it says on the website, I want interviews, I want essays, I want reviews, I want translated works. I'd love for translated works, but I don't take unsolicited poetry because there are other venues that do that, and I know people that I can just poke at, like, hey, it'd be fun to get something from you. Um, but I still get strangers emailing me, and one person asks, "Can I send you work?" They will no. And then and a week later they send back, but it says here you want poetry related, all blah 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 blah. And I said, yes, it does. But the next line says, does not take unsolicited poetry. And then he came back a week later and said, but if I ask you if you want work and you say yes, is that solicitation? Dude, there are other venues. Why are you working so hard at this?
What did they say to that?
Well, I didn't want to like I thought that in my head. I didn't want to say that to them because like if
Oh,
this is someone who's not necessarily experienced with
yeah,
submitting, I don't want to
yeah,
stomp on them.
yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
that's not really fair. And then it'll be like, yeah, in or out of the Rob, he's kind of a dick, actually. Um, so I did try to explain like why I have that process and why, I probably over explained it and I haven't heard back from him. I gave him other suggestions, a place to send if he's not experienced with submitting, and I looked him up. He seems to be local. I gave him a bunch of local options, and
You did just fine. You did good, and you were, I think, quite generous and kind as you
I didn't
are.
I
No,
didn't want to be rude to him, right?
no,
Because
of
I
course
don't know
not.
who he is or where he's at, or
Yeah,
but it's always a
there's
dude
protocols.
who's trying to submit poems to me for periodicities where it specifically says that's the last thing I want.
Yeah. So it's sort of an circling back through that to this question, because I think we must be all agog in this day and age with so many distractions. My question is, how do you find time to read all these things that you're searching for? You have this very active, proactive, um, quite thoughtful curatorial process of not just doing the same folks over and over. That takes a lot of initiative and energy to go searching, to take the initiative to go searching. And then you have to read a fair amount. You're also reading for your own work. Do you have a reading practice? When and how do you read?
Um, it, the kids do a lot of activities, so I can get a half an hour of reading. See, and I use the kid activities for opening a book for the first time and beginning a review. I'm not spending 20 minutes to get into the headspace of something during a half an hour time period. I'm opening something for the first time. So between the two kids, they have 8 activities. So if this one's doing ukulele or the other one's doing piano lesson or she's in a ringette practice or game, what is wrong with you? Or whatever else. Like that's where I do a lot of my first reading for eventual reviews. And then once I'm at my desk, I can take that next step of trying to hammer it into a review. And maybe if I'm really lucky, I can get 3 done in a day.
My God, Rob. So here's my next question. I think about this a lot with the folks I teach and myself. I'm not reading nearly as much as I used to, although I still read a fair amount. My students really struggle with reading, whether it's on their phone or on a
Yeah, yeah,
Kindle
yeah.
or, God forbid, on a book. They tend to be fairly distracted by notifications and social media, and
Oh, fair enough.
they don't watch a lot of TV, but they're always on screens. And so I have a set of questions I'm really eager to share with my students next term. Do you watch TV?
Oh my God, yes. When I was in college, I was asked how much TV I watch a week. And at that point, the TV would go on at 6 and go off at 2 in the morning. And so I gave them a number that no one believed of hours a week. TV is my decompression. It is where I fold and staple. If I'm at the end of the day and I'm fried, I'm in front of the TV folding and stapling. You're just emptying stuff in front of me. What are you
Oh,
looking for?
well, that's
Oh, for
fascinating
God's sakes.
that is fascinating to me about the TV. Okay,
Yeah, if I'm just fried and I can't think, like
yeah,
it's sort of monkey work doing folding and stapling.
got it. But it's also in Ayurvedic medicine, the
Yeah.
folding stapling activates the right hand and left hand brain, and it's nonverbal. So it can be very therapeutic, like peeling carrots or peeling potatoes or something.
If I do
Okay.
too many hours of it, my shoulders do start to hurt because I'll be
Yeah.
hunched over for if I'm
Yeah.
doing that from like
Too
2 or
much.
3 in the afternoon to about 10 o'clock at night. it starts to hurt after a while.
My goodness.
But yeah, like
So,
if I need a reboot, I will attempt an afternoon, even if it's 2 hours at like a pub or a cafe, and just sit there with books and notebook and pen and kind of no expectation. But it's harder to do that with household and life activity and stuff.
mhm.
Ridiculous children. Mm.
Ah, but you're still doing it. And do
Yeah.
you spend a lot of time on social webs? I mean, you need to as a publisher and as a poet in this world, and you do a good job. You promote all of us and the work that you publish for us on Facebook and Insta. Can you tell us about with the world changing with toxicity on Twitter? Are you on Blue Sky? How long do you spend on Instagram? Do you have a practice for social web posting?
I know people that'll take a summer off of social media, and I've never done that because I don't understand that. If my computer is on, all of my social media is on, and I'll dip in and out.
Hmm.
I'll dip in and out like all day. I'll go in and check one thing, see a notification, respond to an email, and I'll go back into working a review.
Hmm.
You know, like even just household stuff. If I need to stay in my head, I can push print on a piece I've been working on that I need to look at on paper. And as it's printing, I might be running upstairs, filling the dishwasher, starting the dishwasher, coming back down, grabbing the I'm piece of paper. I'm good at multitasking. Yeah, this
My
doesn't work.
God, you are. This is so insightful.
Well,
I
as I'm
have
doing it,
always wondered.
as I'm doing an interview while I've got a child emptying boxes beside me, just handing me keys that I like keys from apartments that I don't know where they are anymore from 30 years ago.
I'm going to ask you one more question before I open it up to our audience. Can you
Hmm.
believe it's already 4:37? Well, in Vancouver
For
time, it's
you.
4:37. So we've been at this for a while, and I'm just going to ask you one more question, and then we'll let you have a sip of tea or water or
Yeah.
something, and I'll open it up for folks if they have questions, because they may well. And I wanted to ask you this, because it's kind of building to this. How and when do you recharge?
Um, those cafe or pub afternoons I actually find really recharging.
Okay.
Uh, and there was a period that when middle daughter, her school was somewhere else, and I had to go pick her up at the end of school every day. I found a crappy sports bar nearby, and I could get an hour and a half to 2 hours there before I had to go pick her up. And I that would be totally a recharge. And it could be sketching out variations of like six different reviews. I could be working through notes of a manuscript. I could just be sitting there working. Because I think in like for me, working a review and working on my own work is all part of that general writing practice, right? It's just sitting quietly without having to run off.
Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah,
Sitting quietly without having to
yeah,
run off
you can have.
and
They're yours. You can have
using
them.
what I my takeaway from this fascinating insight into the world and practice and mind of Rob is you just
Yeah.
use all the time you have. You are multitasking in this really invigorating and rich way where you're somehow wired. Maybe this is like growing up on a farm and having to do a bunch of things. You are wired to intuitively know what task to do when. I find that really interesting.
I think that's a trial and error and like I because I did have a kid at 20 and that prompted me to look if I'm going to write it all I have to do it properly, not just one poem every 3 months kind of thing. If I'm going to bother doing it at all, yeah, look, we're not talking about that. If I'm going to do it at all, I need to do it properly. And I'd read a Margaret Atwood line that said if you want full time out of it, you have to put full time into it. So I was running a home daycare until my kid was like 4. I was writing 3 nights a week in a coffee shop from 7 to midnight. I would work when they napped. I would always go out and do the laundry because I knew I could get an hour, hour and a half of writing done. Um, it's you either use that time or you don't have that time.
Oh
And I'm
my.
not. I know people that'll get up like 2 hours before the kids in work. I am not doing that.
Right. Right.
I grew up on a
Yeah.
farm. I don't do early mornings. Done, man. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's soap.
Oh, okay. That is a great response.
Yeah.
Lots to ponder, as I think so many of us struggle with getting things done creatively in addition to all the other things
Well, and
we
she's really helping the whole multitask conversation, isn't she?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Truly,
ridiculous.
truly doing that.
She's just
All right,
pilfering my
folks.
office. That's totally what she's doing.
Okay. So, hey everyone, this is your chance. Maybe just if you have questions or comments, you can unmute and
No,
uh
yeah,
yeah,
It's your
post
nostalgia.
something
you
in
can't have the
chat.
box.
I know, but this is your nostalgia box, isn't it?
Sure.
I feel like it is.
It's not a nostalgia box. It's just a box I have. Yeah, I'm just old. What is wrong with you?
So it's
Yeah,
nostalgia.
yeah, yeah. When you get old, you just start carting stuff around, lady.
I'm gonna put another box that I can rummage
All
through.
right, fine.
Pan, did you have a question?
Rummaging through things.
I don't know if I'm on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, you were. And then you muted yourself. There
Unmute.
you are.
I'm laughing at Rob calling himself old. You're
Oh, I'm super old.
little. Yes, 30 years, give you 30 years on you. Distraction. So you're using distraction to include the whole cosmos into your work, aren't you? You're
Yeah.
you're making use of
Well,
distraction.
it's that like if you live in the world, you have to be in the world, right?
Yeah, you are. You are. Well
You
done.
you can have
And
these. I'm
great
totally happy.
questions, Renee. I really appreciate your enthusiasm.
You're so welcome, Pan. It's an honor to have you here, and what a lovely observation. Yeah, I'm quite fascinated in this as I write long poems, and I've actually I prompted Rob. Rob, this is your chance to ask me a couple questions, remember?
Yeah, as much as the child is allowing me to have an attention span, you weirdo. Okay, she's wandering off with a bunch of my stuff. So, one of my questions for you, what are the difference between Thought JBAP and the Canada Project? They both
Yes.
seem like these complete everything within them projects, but they are this the same but not the same.
Yes. Thank you for asking me this. And I want to begin by saying I'm just typing thought JBAP, the acronym, and
Oh my
then the
goodness.
Canada question mark project. And I'll just speak briefly. And it's not just for me to speak about them, it's in the context of celebrating Above Ground Press and Rob and everything he is and does. And that is, um, I've had now three chapbooks published by Above Ground Press. I'm very grateful and honored to have that work out there through the press. And it has helped me formulate two lifelong projects, one of which is called Thought JBAP, which is an acronym for the heart of, I'm typing it as I'm talking, this journey bears all patterns, which is a multi-book series that blends literary poetry with epic fantasy in verse, so different traditional rhyme forms. And it's through Rob publishing the very first bolus of these poems that I didn't even know what they were. I didn't have a language to explain what I've just said. I didn't have that. But Rob saw something in a little collection of poems um, in a chapbook called After the Battle of Kingsway, The Bees. And I believe that chapbook from Above Ground Press was actually shortlisted for BP Nickel Chapbook Award. But
Yeah, at least one of yours was.
yeah,
It's hard to keep track of all the things.
yeah. And what I wanted to say was just how much of a motivating, inspiring, hey, help me go ahead type of event that was for me. You're publishing those poems way back in, I think it was 2016, right?
Yeah, I think it was. And then in 2019, I did a second chapbook and reprinted the first one
Yeah.
simultaneously.
Yeah, which was incredible. And so for those of us who practice, you know, obscure
Yeah.
long poem forms that you don't necessarily see right away when you go to Indigo or go online to the dreaded consortium that can be very handy for ordering books. I won't name them now. when you order online, you don't necessarily see the kind of work that I'm doing. And so to be seen and heard and valued by, a pretty good publisher of a micro press like Rob, it was really important and really helped me. And I feel a lot of gratitude and like, hey man, this helps the work because when you're working long poetry or any kind of poetry, as many of you will know, it can be very lonely. And this idea of how to get your work out there. So yay, Canadian micro presses like Above Ground Press, and there are others, but I think you're one of the longest standing. You've kind of gone the distance, right?
Well, there are a couple that are older than I am, like what Gary Barwin or what Stuart Ross do. But I think the biggest thing that I offer is network and well,
Yeah,
and distribute like network
distribution.
distribution, which is a variation on like the same thing. That even if I don't sell any, I've got 180 subscribers and 20 friends of the press. The author gets 50, so the work gets out there,
Yeah.
and a good third or almost half of my subscribers are American. So the word gets out there.
Yeah.
And like I almost feel like it's that thing where someone has a cog factory and doesn't know what to do with them, and someone is trying to start like a cog distribution network and doesn't know where to get materials. And the person who introduces those two to each other, it's such a minor thing, but it's a massive thing. And that's
Totally,
and that's
totally.
where I feel like I am with Above Ground and introducing writers to each other that even their work, like finding people that have a relationship to another person's work without even knowing the other person exists, which is really fun.
Yeah. Really profound
Like
statement.
there's a bunch of Philadelphia poets who are doing these uh poems on like labor, having no clue that Vancouver and the Kootenai School of Writing and all of this stuff has a lineage of poems about labor that go back decades. Like Ryan Fitzpatrick falls into that, Jeff Dirksen, like the language poets talking about labor, and or just work poetry like Tom Wayman. And then someone like Ryan X, I don't even know how to say his last name. He's a Philly poet doing similar work. And those two points have no idea the other exists. So there's something fun about telling like Gina Myers in Philly that, hey, Christina Shaw in Vancouver is doing similar work to you. And that is super neat.
It is. And you are
Yeah.
a
And
community
I'm trying
poetry
to
broker.
convince the two of them that they should have a conversation I post online with each other, just talking about what they do, where they came out of, how they got to similar points without having any clue about each other or each other's lineages, really.
Yeah.
But I haven't quite convinced them of that yet. But I just thought that like little linkages like that, I just find super entertaining.
Well, they're entertaining and they can have a profound impact on the writers, as you said. Your
Yeah.
introduction to me to Martha Reed, and what
Yeah.
a terrible loss that she passed
Oh,
so
I know. She was
early.
lovely. She was so lovely.
Yeah, and based in New York, right, Rob? She was based in New York,
She was in Syracuse.
in Syracuse, yes.
Yeah. Well, she was when I met her, she was in Lafayette, Louisiana.
That's right.
Stephen
That's
Brockwell and I read there through her because she was teaching at the university. And then she and her husband ended up in Syracuse. And then that's when she came up to Ottawa to read. It was through that. But I met her when Brockwell had enough air miles to go around the planet twice, and he was going down to Louisiana anyway. And I just tried to find, okay, who's around, who can maybe get us a reading. And I found her, and I ended up in conversation with her, and couldn't get anyone in New Orleans to set up. The timing didn't work for a reading, but she's like, if you're willing to drive a couple hours, we can totally host you here at the university. And whatever year, like 2012 or whatever, 2011, whatever that was. And that was super neat. Got to meet Skip Fox, got to meet all these Louisiana poets. It was very neat.
very neat. Hey, we have a question from Sandra Stevenson who writes, what is going on in Ottawa now for avant-garde readings aside from VerseFest?
Well, Max Middle doesn't do his AB series anymore. He kind of fell off the planet. So there's not really anything specifically avant-garde in that kind of way. But for Ottawa stuff, it's always just look at bywords.ca to see what's going on because the online calendar, everything is on there. Please put these back. Um, yeah, everything is on there as to what Ottawa stuff is doing. But yeah, since Mac stopped doing his series, which was focused on experimental and really out there avant-garde stuff, like very, very cool stuff, there's not been anyone running a series of that kind of focus.
Okay.
Where my readings have always been more like almost like curatorial stuff of above ground, more that sort of, oh yeah, Riverbed. You're right, Grant. You're right, Grant. Why did I not think of the Riverbed reading series, which is super cool and doing spoken word and avant-garde? So that's on me. That's totally on me. You should be interviewing Grant Wilkins.
I absolutely should. And I just, oh, Grant, adore,
He's doing
adore.
amazing stuff. He's doing these big long poems and big
Yeah.
long projects and playing with sound and playing with all sorts of things. Get off
Grant
your phone,
Wilkins,
you
a
weirdo.
true visionary. Okay, here's a few rapid fire little questions, and then I think, my goodness, Rob, it's 4:51. I want you to know something. When I asked Zoom, through its little, oh yes, I have to say it, little AI gremlin, I asked Zoom, well, how long can I keep this Zoom room open? You know, we have 30 hours, but I'm not going to last that long.
Oh, okay.
So
Neither will
here,
my bookshelves with this one.
okay,
He's
here are
ripping
some of my
everything apart
questions.
here.
Yeah. Here are my questions. Little rapid fire sprint questions. Are you still maintaining your handwritten letter writing?
I have never done handwritten letter writing because I get bored after like two or three sentences. But if I'm typing it, I can go on like 4 or 5 pages. And all of my outgoing correspondence for at least 20 years, I've made two copies and one falls into the archive.
Oh,
But
smart.
yeah, I'm writing letters constantly. But it's outreach,
And
right?
yeah, and do you get, so these are not emails, because I know you do lots of those. These are these typed letters that are so
Yeah.
thrilling to get. Um, do you get responses back?
Yeah, I'm actually in a correspondence right now with Melanie Dennis Unruh, a Winnipeg poet, because I just mailed her a letter at one point because she was a subscriber. I just added something in. I was asking her a question, and she wrote back. She wrote back a handwritten letter. Brenda Ijima, I'm in irregular correspondence with her. She's in Brooklyn. I write her a letter a day or two after getting something from her, and it takes her like 6 or 8 months. And then within a day or two, I write her something else. So I don't know if I'm giving her an extra task. I don't know what's happening there.
Well, I have been the beneficiary of some beautiful typed letters, and I am one of those people. I think it takes me about a year to get back to you. So there you are. Now, here's my next question. How long, on average, does it take you to make, from start to finish, your average above ground chapbook?
Um, if I can design it pretty quickly, and there are times that I'll get something over email and I can send back a design within 20 minutes. And then the author has to sort of proof it, and then okay, you're knocking stuff over now. Uh, it depends on how long it takes them to proof it. It depends how long it takes when I have money next and can get in the printer. If they proof it that day and I have money, I can take it in the next day. A week and a half, probably at the shortest, because the printer needs time too. And like I took something in today, but I also took something in yesterday and something the day before. So they need some time to actually make that stuff because they make everything for me in house and they don't send it off to their hub for Staples because the hub kept getting it wrong and taking it 2 extra weeks. So
Okay.
they made an in-house decision a couple years ago that we make all of Rob's stuff here, but only half the staff there do it. The other half are like, we don't know anything about Rob's stuff. Rob's stuff is weird. Because I don't know how to do proper design on a computer machine that sent it in as a digital file.
Yeah.
I am still using scissors and tape and making a physical original that I take in and they have to, print it and flip it over and do that. And then it takes about a day or two to fold and staple. And the first 50 go out to the author as fast as I can get them out.
it's just you do such a lovely job and you go the extra mile. I wanted this peacock blue, which is a thing in the series,
Yeah, that took an
and
extra 2 or 3 weeks to get that cover stock because I'd order that from a different supplier and then take it
yeah,
into my print shop, which is not allowed to print on outside paper, but they do stuff for me.
I know for Rob. Oh, I'm so thrilled. Well, we won't tell anyone what happens in the Zoom call stays in the Zoom call. Okay, so my final question is this. What are you working on right now in terms of your own work?
Um, I am putting to bed two nonfiction manuscripts that I've been about 3 years working on. One is a genealogical nonfiction book. As an adopted person, I've always been the family genealogist, self-determined, and now that I know my biological stuff, I'm writing out the two threads as counterpoint and trying to figure out where I am in the middle with these very different stories that I'm attached to biologically, as opposed to what I grew up with, sort of, I guess, culturally with my parents and all of that kind of stuff. I did a writing diary for a year, the other nonfiction book, and I've been working on three poetry manuscripts, two for about a year, that are both response books. One is Benjamin Nias Podziani, Chicago poet, has been doing a weekly Substack since the first week of January of writing prompts. And I'm writing a poem per prompt. And he's finishing it at the end of this month, and that'll give me like 50 odd, whatever, right? Poems. And that would be a little self-contained book. I might have to go back and redo like six of them, but working on that. I've been working on a Lainey Brown response book because she did a response poetry book. She did corresponding a poem per poem responding to a particular poem in a Rosemary Waldrop collection. So I thought it'd be fun to do the exact same project to her response book to Rosemary.
Oh, that's so
So
meta.
I've been working on that for like a year. And then July, middle daughter she's in the Anglican Girls Choir locally, and they were performing in Belfast and Galway and Dublin. And I started working on a poetry manuscript during that period I like the idea of a poetry book that is basically only like 16 poems, but each poem is really pulled apart, like maybe like 8 pages long, but each a little. So I feel even structurally, it's a couple steps beyond Book of Sentences. So I'm maybe like 8 poems into that.
Lovely.
Yeah, so that's what I'm currently actively working on, and I want to get them all done so I could work on like 5 other things.
Oh. And do you keep a
Normal.
journal? Do you keep one of those bullet journals to keep track of all your creative projects?
No,
No.
that's an extra task.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
You're
folks,
small.
I want to thank everyone, including your sprite, for being
Yes.
here today. I am just thrilled to get some time with you, given that I'm in Vancouver and you're in Ottawa, and
Yeah.
we had a lovely visit, you, Chris, and I, when you were out here in Vancouver. I'm hoping to come out to Ottawa this summer, so
Okay.
please think about that with the new book I have coming out, these epic fantasy books, Brahma's Discovery,
Yeah.
and
You know.
I want to thank every single one of you on this second Sunday.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, before I go, we have some questions. Micheline has asked, I still
Huh.
want to know how you keep the authors distinct in your head.
I can't always. I do try. No, you can't go through that. I do try, but there are times that like I'll just forget something obvious, like Grant Wilkins having to remind me of the Riverbed reading series, which should be on my radar. And why did I forget that? So I'm mostly good at keeping track. Like the above ground sidebar, I have a list of all the authors in sort of repeat or reverse order of when their most recent chapbook came out. So there are times that if I don't have a bunch of submissions, if I want to look for more submissions, I go back through the backlist. It's like, okay, who's due for another chapbook? Who should I poke at? Because I'll forget. I'll completely forget. When I do my big roundup at the end of every year, my best of Canadian poetry list, it reminds me of what books even came out because I completely forgot. I'm doing 150 reviews a year. I don't remember what came out. Hey, Rob, what have you read lately you've liked? I have no idea.
Yeah.
Go to my blog. That'll tell you.
Yeah, exactly. What
And
a good
people
thing.
don't
Go to your
like that as
blog.
an answer. They want a real answer.
No, it's a real answer. Okay, we have some closing comments. I hope you get a chance
Yeah.
to look at the chat.
I feel as though I don't have a full attention for this right now, so I appreciate you, Renee, and everyone else here because I've got Meatball over here. Like, yeah, thanks.
Well, it is a Sunday evening in Ottawa. Hey, is there any snow on the ground, you two?
Is there snow on the ground?
Yeah.
Oh.
And what did we do today? What did we do this afternoon? What did we get?
Christmas present.
No, what Christmas tree, a weirdo.
Christmas present.
Well, yeah, we went shopping and she made me she dragged me around a mall and she bought
Um,
stuff for her two sisters.
I don't have a tree, but I have my little poinsettia out
It's very
there for
nice.
everyone. And I want to really thank all our audience members. We are recording this and we'll let you know. I'm hoping, Rob, that once you and I go through the recording and clean it up, we can then post it on one of your different sites if
Yeah,
you feel comfortable. And then
yeah, yeah.
folks who can't join can take a look. So thank you, Rob. I wish you all the best, you and yours and
Thanks.
your
You
family.
too.
And same to everyone here. And thank you so much for publishing some of my new work.
Yeah. And it was good to see like about 6 or 7 different above ground authors in the audience there too, which is very nice.
Yeah, very, very. Okay, I'm shutting her down. I'm wishing everyone well. And Rob, I'll follow up with you
Okay,
later.
cool.
Okay. Have
Thanks.
a wonderful month, everyone. Happy holidays and solstice. And Merry Christmas for those who celebrate.